So, good Monday to everyone. Greetings to the beginning of our 5 days together this week. And I'm also teaching a retreat through the Insight Retreat Center online. And there's a wonderful space between, it's been 7:45 here for me to come here to our Zoom sitting and teaching. I hope that some of the qualities of the retreat maybe are conveyed during these our time together this week. The one of the practices I have occasionally is in meditation, to say to myself the word here, H-E-R-E. And I use it especially if my mind is more busy or more distracted, and is helpful for meditation. And but other times as well. And here, as an acknowledgement that this is where I'm at. It's not a command like you would give a dog. It's done in a kind, supportive way, without any idea that things should be anything different here. But it's a kind of waking up or a recognition. Here I am, and it's like this, here. And if I'm thinking a lot, then here, I say the word here, and then in the wake of that, I just recognize what is here. So if I'm thinking a lot, then I'm recognizing that I'm thinking a lot. There's a busy mind or an active mind. And that simple recognition is mindfulness. Rather than my thoughts taking me away, the thoughts are the basis for recognizing what's happening in the present moment. I'm thinking about the future or the past. Just here. And then I open to it. And it's very permissive. What is here is allowed to be here. It's just that I'm recognizing it. And as I do this in a relaxed, ongoing way, the forces, the momentum to be caught up in thoughts or be distracted begins to abate as I refamiliarize myself with the sense, the feeling of being attentive, being mindful to here. And here becomes more and more the basis of where attention resides and where I'm staying. And it's not a rejection of anything, but rather it's establishing myself in the present moment with whatever is happening. And there's a world of difference of being clearly cognizably present, knowingly present for something, than being carried into it, caught up in it, obsessing in it. But it's here, it's very gentle. It's permissive, it's allowing, but it allows a kind of gathering together here, and here, and here. And as I do it, I come closer and closer in to the heart of what's happening here, in my body, in my breathing, in my thoughts, my feelings. And there's a settling in here, eventually to kind of what feels like more like the center of gravity of it all, here. So, taking a meditation posture, and sometimes maybe swaying forward and back as a way of beginning to adjust and align and find a good posture, and a way of using your body as a reminder to be here. And gently closing your eyes and taking a few long, slow, deep breaths. These deep breaths are also a ritual for being here, especially as you exhale, to relax into here, And the closest, most intimate part of here is your body. And letting your breathing return to normal. And allowing further softening or relaxing of the body. Whatever is tense or being held. Softening the muscles of the face. Allowing the face to rest. During the day, the face is often involved in all kinds of small expressions. Sometimes expressions of presenting ourselves a particular way to others, smiling and now in meditation letting the face rest. Softening the shoulders. Relaxing the shoulders, releasing them to the pull of gravity. Maybe as you inhale, a sense of lifting and opening and expanding of the shoulders. If you don't feel that lifting, you can take a few deeper breaths to feel the movements of the shoulder. Letting go as you exhale. Softening in the chest. Opening the heart. Softening the crust, the hardness of the heart. And softening the belly. If the belly is held in tight, something in us is working hard to protect ourselves or to want something. And for this period of meditation, perhaps you can allow yourself to feel safe enough for the belly to relax. And then settling into your breathing. Settling into the body's experience of breathing. And then as you need to, as is useful, you can gently, softly in the mind, say the word here. And if you're attending to your breathing, maybe here opens further to your breathing, the body breathing. If there's a lot of thought, here, and recognizing thinking as a present moment phenomena, almost as if you can step back and view it as another person who's thinking or imaging. Here. And in the way that we experience our lived life, the living experience of being alive is only in the present moment. So here brings us closer, drops us into the lived life, how it's experienced in the present, moment after moment. Here. here. Gently, lovingly saying the word here. And maybe popping the bubble of thinking. Popping the bubble of treating thoughts as substantial and somehow real or somehow more important than finding ourselves really intimately connected to the lived experience of the moment. The lived experience we discover through our body, the body breathing. here. The simple movement to being aware here is the door for deeper meditation. It's also the door for how we can more fully be present for others. Even to say here to ourselves silently, so that we're not caught up in thoughts and judgments, bias and expectations. But we give time and space to take in the other, the people we're with. Make time and to allow who they are and what's happening with them to be registered, to be experienced. Take time to experience others here, recognizing the impact they have on us here, without being caught up in the impact. Here is a place of strength and generosity in being with someone else. And may it be that what we learn and how we learn to be in meditation is something that we apply to the world of people, whether it's here to take time to really feel and sense and experience an email before we respond, or a phone call, or a stranger in a store. Just they don't have to know that we are here in line at the store behind them. Just here, allowing ourselves to experience the other. Or in listening or watching the news. Here, letting go of the thoughts, reactions, or knowing the reactions. But here, and learning to be simple and wise, to really see clearly what's happening to us as we listen to the news. And being here, so maybe we can generate goodwill, a certain generosity, or not that we agree with others, but we don't banish them from our hearts. May it be that the meditation practice we do allows us to be more fully here for our world. And in doing so, that we live this life for the benefit and welfare of all beings, maybe in many small ways. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. And may all beings be free. So, greetings, and so on this Monday I'll begin a new series of talks. And for the next few weeks, I'll do talks on the Eightfold Path. And today I'll do a just general introduction to the Eightfold Path. So the Eightfold Path, sometimes called the Noble Eightfold Path, is sometimes seen as being the core formulation of Buddhist practice. It's seen as the path that we engage in as we practice. And the path has the connotations that the practice we do is onward leading, that somehow it takes us along a beneficial path of spiritual growth, a beneficial path of developing the qualities of heart and mind and body that lead to concentration. Concentration meaning ability to really be settled here in the present moment. And it leads to liberation, leads to freedom from our suffering, freedom from the ways in which we hold on or resist to in the way that brings stress, brings tension to us. And sometimes if you go to have a big introduction to Buddhism classes, the Eightfold Path will be presented as a core teaching of Buddhism, and it'll be presented as kind of as something that this is what Buddhists do. This is the fundamental teaching of Buddhism, and it's kind of for beginners. If you go look at the teachings of the Buddha, there might be some truth to that, but overall, in the teaching of the Buddha, the Eightfold Path is not really a beginner's practice, but the Noble Eightfold Path is something that's a unified whole. They all work together. They all kind of come together in a person who becomes mature in this practice. And so the stepping stones to this Eightfold Path as a whole might be the individual pieces of the Eightfold Path. In that sense, the Eightfold Path are stepping stones to the totality, the wholeness of the Eightfold Path, where all aspects of the Eightfold Path are not steps one after the other, but rather are integrated together and unified as a unified way of being in the world. And this idea of a unified way of being in the world, a way of being in the world, is seen in the Buddhist tradition. The story is that in the first sermon the Buddha gave, he highlighted, one of the first things he did was highlight the Eightfold Path in a particular way. The story goes that before his enlightenment, the Buddha practiced with a group of 5 other ascetics, and they did ascetic practices. One huge thrust of or aspect of ancient Indian religious life was some people believed that asceticism somehow tormenting oneself, stopping to eat, living with a lot of restraint, a lot of deprivation, was a way to purify oneself of all one's hindrances, all one's defilements, all the clinging we had, and purify ourselves of all this stuff to come to a place where pure enough to become liberated. So the Buddha practiced that and for many years and found that it was a dead end. It didn't really work. And then he discovered his path to awakening. He then went to find his 5 companions to tell them this new discovery he had, that the asceticism didn't work and there's another way to liberation. And when they saw him approaching, his ascetic friends said, well, the Buddha, Gautama, has has left the spiritual life. He's kind of reverted back to a life of indulging in sensual pleasure, and let's not give him any attention. Let's not stand up to him. Let's not maybe even say hello to him, since he's left the real way or something. But as the Buddha approached, there was something about his peacefulness that was quite compelling for these other five. And they couldn't help themselves but to stand and greet him. And they arranged a seat for him on the ground where they were sitting, and he joined them. And then he said, the Buddha then started off by saying, there's a middle way between asceticism and indulging in sensual pleasures. And that was a big dichotomy that the ascetics and others were living with, is on one hand the choice was to be in the world with indulging in sensual pleasures, devoted to sensual pleasures, and the other was to really reject that and be an ascetic and deny any sensual pleasure. And the Buddha, the first teachings that tradition says the Buddha gave is there is a middle way. The middle way between self-denial and self-indulging. And that middle way is the Eightfold Path. And here he is, the Buddha was enlightened, and he's offering these ascetics a different way of living, and that he now represents. The Buddha represented this alternative way of living, of being in the world, from self-denial and self-indulgence. And he called it the middle way. So in a sense, it's the middle way between self-indulgence and self-denial or asceticism, tormenting. But middle way might not be quite right in the sense that it's, in the spectrum, halfway between. It might be a middle way that's a third way, that's an alternative way that to live. And these eight aspects of the Eightfold Path, they are this way of living that's the middle way. And for the Buddha, it's the way that a person who's spiritually mature actually lives, not because they're assuming these practices, taking them on, but rather these eight practices expresses who they are. It comes naturally out of them. Because the opposite of the Eightfold Path is called the wrong, opposite of them. So the Eightfold Path are things like eight, I should have told you what they are. They're usually in English called right view, usually in English intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And in saying all that, I wanted to emphasize the right. 8 times that word right is repeated, samma, and S-A-M-M long A. And I'll talk more about this. But the opposite of it is miccha, M-I-C-H-A. And it's wrong view, wrong intention, wrong, each of them, action. And the wrong aspect implies that what motivates our action, our speech, our view, how we see the world, it's motivated by greed, by hatred, or delusion. It's motivated by craving and clinging. And so, in the same way, unethical behavior in Buddhism is also said to be rooted in these forces within that are deleterious to ourselves and through our action deleterious to others. Greed, hatred, and delusion. It's excessive clinging and craving and thirsting. And the Eightfold Path is what naturally arises in a person, how a person lives, when there is no greed, hatred, and delusion, when there is no clinging. And so for the Buddha, he was liberated from craving and clinging and attachment. It didn't make him aloof from the world, but rather it made him someone who lived in the world through this middle way. So that was his first teaching about the Eightfold Path. Over time, the Eightfold Path was also seen as a wonderful stepping stone to liberation, to becoming spiritually mature. And these different steps can be taken up individually, and they kind of encapsulate 8 different sets of practices taught by the ancient Buddhist tradition, and modern one as well. And so 8 sets of practices, and those 8 sets encompasses the fullness and all the richness and the kind of completeness of what Buddhist practice is traditionally understood to be. So there's a strong sense in sometimes I've seen, it's changing now, but some decades ago, that the people who practiced Vipassana practice had this idea that meditation, mindfulness meditation, was the be-all and end-all. Everything would, if you just practiced mindfulness enough and meditated, everything else would be taken care of. You'd solve everything. But there was no sense of practicing in daily life. There are other people who think that living an ethical life is the whole thing, and just being strictly ethical and following the precepts is the point. Other people who emphasize wisdom, right view, right understanding, and really think that's what it takes. For the Buddha, and so then there's a whole thing about people who emphasize concentration over mindfulness, and there's the mindfulness concentration conflict that exists between who has the true practice or the right practice. But in the Eightfold Path, all these different things are integrated in one whole, suggesting that as we engage in Buddhism and learn all these different sets of practices, in a certain way we are becoming whole. The practice is addressing all of who we are, not just part of who we are. And all of who we are is summarized into 3 different aspects: wisdom, ethics, and meditation. So wisdom has to do with our understanding of things, the orientation, the frame of reference we're using to understand our lives, the perspectives we use. Ethics has to do with our behavior in the world and how we impact others and the world around us. And meditation, or cultivating the mind, has to do with the deeper aspect of really transforming the heart in a way that allows for liberation to happen. And so the first 2 steps of the Eightfold Path have to do with wisdom or understanding. The second next 3 steps in the path have to do with ethics, and the last 3 have to do with meditation and cultivating the mind. And so it's what the wholeness of it is that involves wisdom, action, how we are ethically in the world, and developing and changing our inner life, maturing that inner life, our mind, through meditation and other inner kind of practices. And so the Eightfold Path is for people who are beginners, understanding wisdom and the reason why, the rationale for how this works is important. For people who are spiritually mature, it's a deep insight that makes it obvious that this is a way of living that frees us and is free of suffering, free of the ways in which we operate in the world that do cause suffering, free of attachment and clinging. And so to engage and explore and reflect on and contemplate and practice the Eightfold Path is phenomenally rich and beneficial in so many different ways, and really touches eventually all aspects of our life in a useful way, and by practicing and seeing and learning. So that's a general introduction today to the Eightfold Path, and I will continue, I guess, more introduction tomorrow, and over these next few weeks we'll take our time and go through the Eightfold Path, and hopefully you'll appreciate its value in all its details and all the different practices that it entails, and you'll get a sense that how it helps make a whole of Buddhist practice and a whole of you as a practitioner. So thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow.